Hey, good morning, equals. It is well into back to school. Although here in Columbus it has been so hot, they keep, actually, I believe today they've canceled the public schools. They've been letting them out early because it is just too hot. I believe we get a break today. It'll only be 91. Anyway, I want to do a series of kind of short, single subject videos for you, still in the theme of LGBT youth, going back to school. So yesterday, and I do work in this industry, we were talking about, at least in an email exchange, about best practices for single gender schools around transgender students. Interesting conundrum, because a single gender school, again, this would be the binary, that there are either females or there are males. And then, of course, there are non-binary students who don't consider themselves male or female. And, you know, we used to kind of call this androgyny when I was younger. And so there's kind of an in-between place. Certainly, some folks would say, well, your birth certificate, whatever's on your birth certificate determines, you know, whether you are male or female, and if it's a single gendered space, that your birth certificate or whatever you were assigned at birth should be the determining factor. I disagree. That gender marker at birth is an opinion of your doctor. He doesn't do a chromosomal test. He doesn't do an x-ray of your pelvic region to see what kind of internal organs you have. He doesn't, you're too young for your hips to display typical female or male. I'm not a forensic pathologist by any means, so I don't know what that is, but men's hips, you know, are shaped differently than traditionally women's hips are. And so he doesn't do any of that. He looks at genitalia and he makes a judgment call. And there's actually like advice. Well, if certain things are certain sizes, then it's male. And if things don't meet those certain sizes, then maybe we're talking about an intersex child. So it is, now while most of the time the doctor gets that judgment call right, it is still a judgment call. And sometimes the judgment call needs to be corrected later. As the child grows up, their brain develops, they have understanding of themselves and move through life. Now, certainly, childhood, adolescent are opportunities for all of us. They were opportunities for all of us to try different things on, to try different personalities, try different clothing styles, try different ways of being. And yeah, that is part of being a young person. Gender dysphoria, right, or so the medical term for somebody who for the hate to say condition, it's a label for somebody who recognizes that their brains and what their body says about them differ somehow. Again, it could be gender non-binary, gender non-conforming, or transgender. Again, reminder that transgender people, some people do nothing. They just understand themselves to be transgender. Some people socially transition. So socially transition means they may change their name. They may change their gender markers on their identity documents. They may move through the world using the pronoun that matches their gender identity, but they don't do anything surgically. They may or may not be taking hormones, that in those hormones, if somebody who is assigned male at birth takes estrogen, it allows for breast development, to some extent, fat padding on the hips and the thighs that give a more female shape, may affect facial hair growth, all of that. Then there are other surgeries that a transgender person may have. But hormones do a lot. And so somebody who is assigned female at birth may be taking testosterone because their gender identity is male, and the testosterone, deepens their voice. All those things that happen to young men as they move through adolescence, kind of a little. I've heard it explained. There's a little bit of an increase in aggression, muscle mass, facial hair, actually balding patterns. All of that are brought on by the testosterone. So that may be all they do. And then they may have various surgeries, whether it's gender confirmation surgery, chest surgery, whether to reduce the chest or enhance it. Although I understand hormones do an amazing thing. Or they may have adjustments to the genital area. They may do facial contouring, laser surgery to remove beard. I mean, there's all kinds of things that somebody may engage in. But some people only socially transition. Right? So when we're talking about children in a school who are transitioning, generally all we're talking about is a social transition. We're not talking about surgery. The child may be on puberty blockers depending on how old they are. I'm told that doctors like to have a child enter puberty, make sure that the feeling of being transgender is consistent, persistent, and there's another int, consistent, persistent, and insistent. Those are the three that over time, those three things remain the same, and including into puberty a little bit. And then they may, if that remains true, consistent, insistent, and persistent feelings of being transgender, they may put the child on puberty blockers. And what a puberty blocker does is buy the child an even longer period of time to make decisions about their gender going forward into adulthood. It doesn't do anything else. Once you stop a puberty blocker, body would go through puberty as it might have a couple years before. So it just postpones puberty and gives a child longer. So those things may be going on, they may not. So a child in a school, you're just talking about what name they're using, talking about what pronouns are being used by the school. What do their identity documents say? Is the name change been done by a court or just something the child has decided, sometimes along with their parents? So these are all things that the child may be dealing with. Are they being allowed to use the gendered bathroom, the gendered spaces? All right, so back to gendered. What if it's a single gender school? So a single gender school, best practices. If a child enters the school, so say it's an all-girls school, and the child enters the school identifying as female, but somewhere along the line of their 6 years, maybe if it's an elementary school, 4 years if it's a high school, it's not forever, all right? But their time in the school, if they transition after they start, so now they're identifying as male, male name, but they want to keep their education consistent, then the best practices for a school are to accommodate the child. Now, of course, an all-girls school is not going to have too many men's bathrooms, but they probably have some. So the child just uses those, or a gender-neutral bathroom. All of those things can be accommodated based on the building, the way the building's put together, based on what the child and the parents want. But it's mostly important as to how the child feels safe. That said, if a child, so we're still talking about an all-girls school, if a child was assigned female at birth, but is identifying as male and using male on identity documents, when they apply for a single gender school, like an all-girls school, then it was certainly at that point, it would be totally okay for the school to say, no, look, this is a girls' school. If you are identifying as male, you should be applying to the all-boys school. All right, so let's shift over to the all-boys school. Same story. If there is a student, enters school, identity documents and everything are male, so that fits with the profile of the single-gender school. Start school sometime along those years, and again, it's not forever. The child will outgrow the school and move on somewhere else. all right, but decides that they want to socially transition to female, the school should support that child. Again, there's going to be a woman's room in the school somewhere for that child to use, or maybe it's a gender neutral bathroom. Highly recommend those. So there's options. And again, it's where does the child feel safe? Now, if that child who was assigned male at birth has already decided to socially transition to female before applying to an all-boys school, it would certainly be consistent with the school for them to say, hey, look, this is an all-boys school. You are a girl. You should be attending the all-girls school over here. So it kind of depends on the timing of the situation as to best guidance. Is that the law? No. This is just best guidance for schools. There is no law that prevents it. It's the best guidance that we have in that particular situation. So, single gender schools, how to handle transgender students who transition during their time at the school or transition before entering the school. Different story. Support the student if they're already in the school. Recommend that they apply to the gender that they with which they identify school if they've already socially transitioned. Bye, equals. Have a great weekend, and I'm going to be traveling next week, so I will put up a video Sunday morning, and then I will put one up Wednesday. They will have been filmed in advance because I won't be able to do anything while I'm traveling next week, but I will keep them coming. There'll be these little short single issue videos. See you later, equals.